A lot of the time I see the point of a rule or a restriction and I say, yeah, I support the idea in principle, but not in practice. Restrictions on speech are a good example of this. I find myself agreeing with the idea that there are things people shouldn't say. And in principle, I'm on board with a rule prohibiting, say, hate speech or spreading harmful misinformation. But in practice, I'm against the idea that there are very many things that people shouldn't be allowed to say. It's worth comparing this to John Stuart Mill's most famous arguments against restrictions on speech. He thinks these restrictions impede the search for truth. The clash of ideas in a field of free and open discourse will help people to learn the truth, to expose falsehood, and to remind the public why it endorses certain truths. Restrict discourse, and you rob people of important values related to the truth goal of discourse. But this seems to me an overly optimistic view of public discourse. Most people deviate in predictable ways from perfect rationality, and they're vulnerable to misinformation, especially in heated clashes of ideas. They ignore norms of discourse aimed at the truth and instead spew hot streams of filthy invective. Why not do away with this as much as we can, using rules against hate speech or spreading misinformation? The problem isn't with these rules. Again, they're fine as abstract principles, but remember that the rules have to be applied in the real world by real people who are just as much as anyone else is irrational and biased towards certain points of view. The rules aren't going to interpret themselves, and they're not going to be applied by people who are motivationally and informationally perfect. They're not going to be applied by a magical unicorn. So look at who will be applying them. Look at who will be interpreting them. How likely is it that these people in charge of censoring ideological hacks will just be a different group of ideological hacks? Imagine, in the worst case, that it's your moral and political enemies who are emboldened and empowered to impose the rules against hate or misinformation. How will they use that power? Who will fact check the fact checkers? Does the power to restrict still seem like a good idea? I think it's obvious to me that censors are prone to abuse their interpretive authority in applying anti-hate and anti-misinformation principles. I can think of historical examples when they have done this in ways that have significantly harmed and marginalized already marginalized groups. In fact, all it usually takes for people to be more supportive of speech freedom is to find themselves holding to some minority view. So, the best argument for speech freedom isn't that people are rational and committed to seeking and spreading the truth to the exclusion of all their other goals and interests. Rather, the best argument is that people are often irrational and self-serving, and so can't be trusted with the power to regulate the speech of others.